Good morning. This is Cali Cat Tap Talks, and I'm with Kathy Healy.
Good
And
morning.
she is here today, and we are going to talk about how she went from beer being delivered into her backyard to becoming a wine sommelier.
Exactly. That's how
All
you
right.
say it.
All
Yep.
right. So tell us your story from when beer got delivered to you to becoming a wine connoisseur.
Well, I was born in 1946. I am 78 years old, and I am from the Philadelphia area, specifically the city of Norristown, Pennsylvania. It's famous because of Tommy Lasorda. He was from there, the famous coach of the LA Dodgers, and Mike Piazza, who is his nephew, another baseball player. So a lot of baseball players, and baseball was the only thing for kids back then.
Hmm.
So in 1946, I was born in the city, and in that city was a brewery. The brewery is called Schmitz, not Schlitz. Schmitz. It's a German brewery, specifically in the Philadelphia area, way back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So back then, women did not have a car. They raised kids and stuff. So we had a bread man. He delivered bread to the front door. We had a milkman. He delivered milk to the back door. We had an ice man because we didn't have an ice. We had an ice box, but we didn't have a refrigerator. And we had a beer man. So the milk was delivered in glass quart bottles in a case to the backyard. The beer was delivered in quart bottles, quart glass bottles with a cap. So, and the bread man was the front, and the ice man was in the back door. So all those things happened. One, because women didn't have a car. They got their groceries from time to time at a corner market. There was no Kroger. There was no Acme. There was no Kmart, Walmart. None of that existed except little corner stores that maybe was a meat market or a little bit of groceries. So when beer is delivered to your back door and you have milk and you have bread and you have butter and you have ice, that is your basic of your essentials. So beer was like our water. Uh, we had water. We had a tap. We had a well. I am one of 13 children. My mother was pregnant 13 times. I'm the oldest daughter. I have a brother 1 year older than myself. So, and they were all single births, no twins or triplets or anything like that. So, as the oldest daughter, what I did was I did diapers. And I changed diapers and I held babies and I did strollers and I did laundry and we hung the laundry out in the backyard on a line.
Hmm.
But our main go-to was whatever my mother made for dinner. Our main go-to for entertainment was a deck of cards and a bottle of beer. Now, not when I'm 13 or 12 or something, but the family, my mother had five sisters and three brothers, and they all lived within 5 blocks of each other and around the church, which was across the street. The school was down the street. Everything was walkable. You didn't have to drive anywhere because everybody had one car. There was one phone on the wall. That was it. It was dial up. So when the family got together after dinner or on Saturday or Sunday, the kids played in the backyard. We played tag, we roller skated, we played jump rope, and all the things that were simple. The parents would sit around and play canasta. They would play poker. They would play bridge. But they always had a glass of beer beside them because beer was our water.
Wow.
Beer was delivered like milk and butter and bread and ice. Beer was essential. And it was simple and it was always there. And A quart of beer was depending they had different kinds of lagers. A quart of beer was about 10 cents. Then it went up to 25 cents for a quart of beer. Now, a quart of beer is like it's 26 ounces, 24 ounces, and so it's like two cans of beer, which are Bud Light and our Michelob Ultra and our uh, everything else that is available now. So for people who didn't exist, were born after the 2000s, they don't know what a quart of beer looks like.
No.
It, it's glass. It was glass because everything could be recycled and put through a, uh, a system where it cleaned the bottles, put the beer back in, and then the bottle was reused, like recycling now, pretty much.
Mhm.
So our days, beer wasn't anything that was bad. It was just there. And it was part of each day, not necessarily a meal. We would have, the children would have milk, but we didn't really have a glass of water. Uh, Water was simple and it was already there, but water wasn't a necessity. It was just simple. The necessity water was to do the laundry, do the clothes, give the kids a bath,
Uh-huh.
and that's what water is for. Water really wasn't for to drink. It wasn't. There was no bottles of water. Uh, but bottles of water, I don't know the exact date when it came, which is now a necessity of life.
Uh-huh.
So a typical weekend, we would my somebody would make a cake or somebody's birthday. My mother had all these children. My mother's sisters each had 7 or 8 or 9 children, all within blocks of each other. So we would all get together at my grandmother's house, which was kind of the center point of the daughters and the sons and the husbands, and people did go to work, but people had simple jobs. People went to work for a bank down at the corner of Main Street and, say, Main and DeKalb or something like that. The Main Street, there was maybe one or two banks in the whole city. Our city of Norristown was the county seat where all the courthouses existed for Montgomery County. It was
Mm.
in Montgomery County was not part of Philadelphia, but was part of that area of Philadelphia, Valley Forge. King of Prussia was just getting started. King of Prussia now is a very big deal. King of Prussia started uh, probably 1970 with 12 stores. Now it's 400 stores, and King of Prussia is a well-known city around the United States for shopping. It's a huge shopping center,
Mhm.
not uh, not like Minneapolis, not like Mall of America. It's not like that, where Mall of America is 3, 4, 5 stories tall, and Mall of the America has a roller coaster in it and all this stuff. That is not uh, the King of Prussia Mall, but it's a center point of Montgomery County.
Mhm.
So back then, we had all these children. We had cousins and nieces and nephews, and we all just went and played. We played hide and go seek. We played tag. We did roller skating. We jumped rope. We climbed trees. We did simple things that didn't cost money.
Mhm.
We just had each other. But the parents would be sitting in the dining room around a large table with maybe 6 or 8 or 10 chairs, and they would play cards, and Monopoly or Scrabble or some kind of game.
Mhm.
But the children didn't get into the games. We just played with each other, and every adult had a glass of beer.
Mhm.
So when we were 16, 18, sometimes our parents would let us have a sip of beer, a sip of this, a sip of that. But we didn't indulge in it because it was an adult drink. We just drank what was ever there, probably a glass of milk or a pitcher of lemonade.
Mhm.
That was something that sat on the counter, maybe a couple ice cubes in it. But, or the lemonade would sit out on the porch and the kids would grab some or something like it. But this is lemonade with lemons, not lemonade of Crystal Light or something. This is lemons, a little bit of sugar, and water.
Mhm.
And that was our go-to drink. So as we got older, uh, beer was our supplement to a high. Uh, wine, we there was probably wine in the area, but it wasn't in our home. So as I got older and I started dating and started getting going to work and things like that, some of the girls would say, let's go out after work. And now I'm 19, 20, 21, and we would go to a bar. Everybody would have beer because beer was on tap,
Yeah, it was
and
a staple.
we had a brewery in our area. So then I got a little introduced to wine. Maybe somebody had a glass of wine, or they had bourbon or scotch or tequila or some kind of beverage, rum and coke, 7 and 7. Uh, uh, you had vodka and orange juice, simple drinks. They weren't exotic. Not
Mhm.
there's no such thing as a cosmopolitan. So anyway, I feel like I was really introduced to other things after I was late 18, 19, 20, and started to date. And back then you couldn't drink till you're 21, so you had a false ID and you went out to party. And a couple of the universities like Penn State, Temple University, Drexel University, Villanova, all those universities were close to our area, so there was always frat parties, and we were invited because my brother, boys went to college back then, but girls really didn't
Mhm.
because there was no money. The money was for the boys for the education. I have a couple sisters who went to nursing school, but I was the oldest and I went to work to help the
Mhm.
family. So, our experience about getting alcohol into the house was for adults. And then when I got older, I started maybe drinking a scotch and water, something somebody introduced me to, but I really didn't know what it was. So I married at the age of 22, and my husband was military because everybody back then, this is 1968, and everybody went to Vietnam. All
Mhm.
the men, there was what is called a draft, and all the men were drafted, or they went to Mexico, or they went to Canada, or they left the United States, or they had a draft exemption, like the only son of the family, or a disability, or um, something that exempted them from the military. Other than that, all men left. And I married, and my husband, at the time, we were in Washington, D.C., and this is a much bigger city. Existing to, I went to Washington, D.C. with my husband for 2 years, but then I was exposed to a larger city, Washington, D.C., and all the things that were happening in the 70s, late 60s and 70s, mostly was circled around the Vietnam War and all the exposure we had to other countries, other worlds, and people dying.
Mhm.
But I had some girlfriends and stuff, but my husband was in the Navy. And anyway, so then he was transferred to Hawaii, which is another market, which was larger than the small town I was from. And I got exposed to sake, and I got exposed to, from Hawaii, other beverages that didn't exist where I came from.
Mhm.
So I learned about wine, I learned about sake, I learned about beer, I learned about bourbon, scotch, gin, rum, all those things. But I worked for Geico, Government Employees Insurance Company, which is a gecko now, but at the time they only insured government employees. Now they insure everybody. But it is a small agency of the federal government, and I was a data entry clerk. I then came back to the United States after being in Hawaii for a couple years and went to the town of Lima, Ohio. And who did I move next door to? A person who owned a beer distributorship. They had a beer distributorship of Budweiser, which is the Budweiser, the king of beers. So
Mhm.
they had all everywhere. Every time you walked in their house, and they lived next door to us, they had beer. So beer again was my focus. Beer again was learning to play bridge and sitting and starting to have children in 1972, 73, 74, and being with neighbors and doing things. But I went to work in a bar
Mhm.
because data entry didn't exist in Lima, Ohio. So I was a bartender at the age of 27. And I stood behind the bar, and the bar kind of was sunken, and I was pregnant. So I couldn't lean over and give the beer or the wine or the bourbon or whatever drink they had to the customer sitting at the bar. My bar was sunken, and I would reach up. Anyway, as a bartender, you're exposed to everything.
Yes.
And then I learned more about wine. Wine, this is in Ohio, Lima, Ohio. And after Lima, Ohio, we moved to Cleveland, Ohio. We moved to Detroit, Michigan. And in Michigan is where I got my divorce. I divorced, and the kids were 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Mhm.
And I was still a waitress. I was still a data entry person. I had 2 or 3 jobs, and while the kids, I was in what is called a babysitting co-op, where you didn't exchange money. You
Yeah.
only exchanged time, is was the babysitting co-op. But we had local parties and neighborhood parties, and beer was always cheap. So we had beer, and somebody would bring a bottle of wine, and I would get exposed to it. So after the divorce, you're just making do. And then I met my second husband, who was in the Air Force, and we were married in 1983.
Mhm.
And he was an Air Force pilot. He served in Vietnam, served in Kuwait. Well, actually, the first Gulf War hadn't happened yet. Uh, but he was exposed to different parties and stuff, people in the military, and the people in the military were a little more elegant. They had a little more exposure to international beverages, and I learned more about wine. So I'm in Detroit. The kids are getting older, and I had my own newspaper column. I was a bartender at night, and as a bartender and a server, you're learning more and more and more about what's behind the bar. The bartender is the key to the restaurant because he keeps as fast as he can serve is as fast as I can put the drinks on the table and learn more and more and more.
Mhm.
So I'm learning about episodes of what it takes for a person to get inebriated, when to stop serving somebody, when if a, some people can drink 8 beers and not get drunk because they have a different metabolism. Some people can drink 2 vodka and tonics and be drunk.
True.
So
True.
it is how uh, you learn about people. You learn about what it takes to get them to have fun, enjoy the evening, but not get crazy and wild and sometimes violent. Sometimes alcohol does that to you, and it does that to your brain, and sometimes you can't walk straight. It's hard just to go to the bathroom sometimes if you're in a bar and drinking all night. So I'm in Lima, Ohio. Then we moved to Cleveland, Ohio, then Detroit, and that's where I met my second husband. So, and he was military and in the reserves, and we moved from Detroit, Michigan to Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Oklahoma was uh, a wild, wild west. It compared to Washington, D.C., compared to Honolulu, compared to the other cities where at Detroit. Oklahoma was ball caps and people who their kids played football, their kids did tennis. They a lot of sports
Oh,
happened
yeah,
there,
a lot of sports.
but alcohol was not as prominent there. From Oklahoma, we moved to Massachusetts, Boston, Lexington, Massachusetts, which is a very Lexington, Massachusetts is close to Harvard, close to Arlington, Boston, and very cosmopolitan.
Hmm.
So then I became a waitress again and a bartender. So after that, then we moved to Long Beach, California. So Long Beach is LA County.
Yeah.
LA County is everything. But my friend who lived next door to me in Lima, Ohio, had also moved to LA. And so she said, let's start our own business. And she was a restaurant writer. She wrote restaurants for the Orange County Register, for the LA Times, for Napa Valley winemakers. She wrote columns for about maybe 6 different newspapers, not nationally syndicated, local columns. So we started a wine business selling wine to restaurants. She would do the writing and she would publish articles about this restaurant and the wines they carried.
Hmm.
And my job was to go out and sell the wines. So I learned Cabernet. I learned Cabernet Sauvignon. I learned Merlot. I learned Zinfandel. I learned Cinsault. I learned Pinot Grigio, Pinot Noir, all the grapes, the grapes that make the wine and what makes wine. And so my education about wine actually started in 1988. Uh, more because I'm selling wine for a living now.
Yeah. So you're
Okay.
looking at
My
it's like we call that streetwise. So
Yes,
yeah, so you
yes,
did a streetwise
exactly.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So our territory was Palm Springs. Uh, I lived in Long Beach. She lived in Santa Monica, and our territory was San Diego to San Clemente, San Clemente through Orange County, all the way up through I would have to say Santa Barbara, but all the way into Palm Springs. We had a very prestigious winery who came with us called Gurgish Hills, Grgich Hills Wine, and he was from Croatia, the winemaker. His name is
Hmm.
Michael Gurgish. So we had a very prestigious wine in our book. I could sell wine, I could sell less known wines, but this was my forte. Luckily, because she knew about writing, she knew about restaurants, she knew about people, and all I did was sell. But I had a job as a waitress as well. My kids were in high school, and I during the day I sold wine. And then in 1998, my husband was transferred because of his job and because of what he did in the airline business, airplane business. He sold avionics parts to airplanes.
Hmm.
And but Las Vegas was the place to go for, you know, for that area. So we moved to Las Vegas in 98. Within 3 weeks, I had a job at Caesar's Palace.
Hmm.
My hotel I was a waitress in Long Beach, what's called the Westin Long Beach. It was a Starwood company, but at the time, Starwood owned Caesar's Palace, was the backer of they owned and managed Caesar's Palace, the Desert Inn, all under Starwood.
Uh-huh.
So I walked in from the Westin Long Beach, walked into Caesar's Palace with all my seniority, but I started on Graveyard. Everybody, it because now I'm union.
Yeah.
I didn't I didn't know what a union was. I didn't
Yeah.
know union rules, but everybody starts on Graveyard. So I became a waitress at Caesar's Palace on Graveyard in 1998. 6 months later, this lady, I'm on graveyard, and this lady comes over and she said, see that paper on that wall over there? I want you to sign your name. I said, okay, what does that mean? So it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I said, I go and I signed my name, and there was about 12 names on this paper. She said, you need to go and be a gourmet server. You know a lot about wine, you know a lot about beer, you know a lot about stuff, so you can go not just working in the cafe, you need to go to the upscale gourmet restaurants.
Hmm.
So I signed the paper. Within 6 months, I became a gourmet server. Now I'm working 3 to 10 at night, but I'm serving with famous chefs. I'm serving with servers that have uh, tuxedos and beautiful jewelry, and the people from this is 1998. And in 2000, so now I'm a gourmet server. So in 2000, which was about another maybe 9 months from there, this lady came over to me and she said, see that paper on the wall? I want you to sign it. I said, what is it? And she said, it's for a sommelier. I don't know how to spell sommelier. I didn't know what a sommelier was. I didn't
Yeah.
know anything about it. I'm naive. I'm from Norristown. I don't know what's going on. So I signed the paper. It turns out for the first time, this is 2000, for the first time, Caesar's Palace was hiring a sommelier, four of them in their 12 restaurants. So anyway, I signed my name, and it was a verbal test, a written test, and a test where they had about four managers in a room, and it was a question and answer verbal test.
Hmm.
So it turns out 75 people applied for this job because it's a union position. So they have to interview you by union law. So I went to the interview. I took the written test. I did a verbal test, and I did a committee test. I came in third out of 75 people.
Wow, that's
I
great.
didn't
That's great.
I didn't know that I knew what I knew until it was thrown in front of me. So I became a sommelier in 2001 at Caesar's Palace. Now there were four of us, and we had to be fitted for our tuxedos, but I had to look like a man because
Really?
almost all sommeliers in the world are men, because all through Europe, sommeliers, women weren't allowed in the basement. And so it was probably 45 to 50 years ago that women in the United States were allowed to have this position if you earned it. But in Europe, even back then, women just didn't exist. They existed in the tasting rooms, they existed in the families, they could crush the grapes, they could sell the wine, they could bottle, but they wouldn't allow them in the cellar.
Why? Why? Why wouldn't they let women in a cellar?
Because when you in the palm of your hand, and most people know this, women know it, when you sweat, when you have your period, right here in the center of the palm of your hand, you sweat, and people in Europe and other countries consider that unclean. When you have the sweat, you can actually, they believe, of course it's not true, they believe that you will spoil the mind because your metabolism has changed, and it will change the velocity of the temperature of the wine, and your metabolism can change what happens in the cellar. So they weren't allowed down there because they had their period,
Wow,
you know,
that's
even
interesting.
though it's three,
That's really
4 days.
interesting.
Yeah, even though it's 3 or 4 days a month, the rest of the month you didn't have your period, but during that time, so they just weren't allowed in
Wow.
the cellar. Okay.
Okay.
They could do other things at the winery, but they couldn't do that. It's in the United States that sommeliers then were, but around the world, all sommeliers, because at age 9 in Italy is when they start grooming the men to be sommeliers. Those sommeliers are in the same restaurant their whole life because the family-owned restaurant, I'm talking restaurants in Venice, Italy, in Rome, in Milan,
Yeah. Yeah.
all over Italy. Now, in the territory of Burgundy, in Paris, in Versailles, in Marseille,
Yeah. Pretty
in
much everywhere.
Alsace, all over France, all over
Yeah.
Spain, all over Germany. Sommeliers existed, but they were all men. So when this kind of theory came to the United States, women were just excluded. So when I passed this test and I became one of the top four sommeliers in Caesar's Palace, I had to look like a man. So I wore a tuxedo,
Mhm.
my hair was short, and all people come into Caesar's Palace from Saudi Arabia, the whole world. Now I call the Pac Rim, which is Korea, Philippines, um, Brunei, Australia, New Zealand, all of South America, all those countries were men, except in the United States. And some of those countries, their servants at their home were men. So
Mhm.
women were not allowed to serve the table. They were the back portion of the service. So I in Caesar's Palace, there were tables I was not allowed to go up to because I'm a woman and they only want male servers. Even though they're in the United States, in their country, they only have male servers. Okay, male servants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so women, and this is 2000, that's 25 years ago. So things have evolved, of course, in many, many ways, different ways for women. But back then, I would say in the United States, there were maybe 20 to 30 women, and the rest were men.
Wow.
And I was just lucky to be one of them. And in order to be a sommelier, you have to test. You test in the world. It's actually the government of the Court of Master Sommeliers is in England, but you can test in Spain, France, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, Japan, anywhere you want, you test. And you
Mhm.
have to pass these tests in order to keep your credentials. Kind of like a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, a CPA, they need certification.
Yeah.
You also need a certification to be a sommelier.
Mhm.
So I'm besides doing that, and I had a part-time job in an airline for another reason we'll talk about in a minute. But so I was at Caesar's Palace from 3 to 11 every night, 5 nights a week. But during the day, I had to go to school to get my credentials. So I
Mhm.
was in school from in 2000, 44 weeks a year. So I was in school during the day, another part-time job with an airline. My husband still was in the Air Force as a reserve. He was gone 35 weeks a year.
Wow.
And so I had lots of freedom. I worked at night. I went to school during the day. I had an airline job, loading luggage, and I was busy.
Mhm.
But I had to get my credentials in order to be called a sommelier, in order to be certified within Caesar's Palace.
So do they do the
So,
credentials like once a year, or do they
well,
do it?
the credentials are platforms.
Okay.
In other words, there's how do I want to describe it? Okay, kind of like a nurse. When when you go to school to be a nurse, then you're a a regular nurse, then you become a registered nurse, then you become a nurse with a master's degree, a nurse with a doctorate. Sommeliers have to go to school and they have to be registered through the Court of Master Sommeliers, which is governed, like I said, in England. So the test comes from England, but it's about wines of the whole world. They develop the test, they develop the course, but you can take the course in Miami, you can take the course in New York, San Francisco. They give the tests around the United States, around the world, to get you certified to serve and be uh, granted the degree of sommelier. And there's levels
Mhm.
regular, introductory, advanced, professional, grandmaster, things like that. There's also what is called a master of wine. That's more about the earth, the terroir, the platform at where the wines are
Mhm.
made. It's more of the backstory of wine. The Court of Master Sommeliers governs the people who serve the wine, and you have to be certified to do that. So I had to go to school to learn how to be certified
Wow. Wow.
and still go to work at night. And my job during the day, I loaded luggage on airplanes for American West Airlines because my mother was ill. I lived in Las Vegas. She lived in Philadelphia. I had a sister who did breakfast every day, another sister who did lunch, another sister who did dinner because my mother was very ill. And every 3 weeks I flew to Philadelphia, but I couldn't afford to fly every month. So I went to work for an airline so I could fly free and go help my mother
Oh, that's
and
pretty
my sis
smart. That's pretty smart. Yeah.
yeah, and help my sisters uh,
Yeah.
with the course of it was about 7 years she was ill. And so but she didn't want to go to a nursing home. And my mother also had sisters, and we had nieces and nephews. Everybody helped.
Yeah.
And she she eventually passed, but we did the best we could, and I did the best I could once a month by saying to my sister, "Stay home. I'm going to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm going to stay there, and I'm going to stay with her, and then I'll go back to my life in Las Vegas." So
Mhm.
everybody helped for her illness during 7 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Anyway, so I just stayed with the airline, and I had that during the day. I had my wine at night. Then I had school, and I had
Yeah.
a husband.
And
My husband was,
you made wine.
and I made one. Now,
So
wine,
how were you
it,
able to make wine during this
well, it's
you're
called
doing a lot of
juggling.
juggling. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. You're one
I
of
think,
many
ev-
women.
I, I think every mother in America is a juggler.
Yes, very true, but you're a
You're
juggler,
juggling
juggler, juggler,
You're
juggler.
you're juggling sex with your husband, you're juggling grocery shopping, you're juggling feeding the kids, you're juggling baseball, soccer, dance classes, and
Yeah.
everything else. And you, for some reason, you always have time. The
Yeah.
time just 24 hours gets filled.
You always make
So
time
in the meantime,
to brew something.
we're talking about the organization called Grape Expectations.
Okay.
Grape Expectations was a warehouse, and what they did was we would get grapes from California and mostly California, hardly any from Arizona, but Nevada doesn't have grapes. It's too hot.
Uh-huh.
That
Uh-huh.
in seasonal, you can grow a little bit of red grapes, but not much. So almost all the wine. So we, as a group, this organization, it was a warehouse full of barrels of wine. We took the grapes from the vines, and we put it in machines and we destemmed them. Took the stems, the leaves, and everything that was it when you pull the grapes off the vines,
Mm.
everything that comes with it, and all the trash. Uh, and we just took that away, and we just had the juice. The juice, we crushed it. We did everything ourselves. In this warehouse, and it was called Grape Expectations. We were making our own wine by the
Mm-hmm.
barrel. Okay. And we chose 30% Cabernet, 20% Merlot, 20% Cabernet Franc, and maybe 30% Pinot Noir. All we chose what would go in the bottle. We
Yeah.
chose what was going into the barrel. And we also put yeast and combinations to make the grape juice into wine. It takes about a year
Mm-hmm.
in the barrel, but you're stirring and you're kind of nurturing the wine in the barrel. So you go back to the barrel and you roll it, and so you're caring for the wine in the barrel. As
Mm-hmm.
a group, there's maybe in a barrel there's 20 cases, 12 bottles to a case. Okay. So there's 240 bottles or 20 cases in a barrel. Well, you need a group of people. What am I going to do with 20 cases of wine? So we had about 12 or 14 people, a couple of more sommeliers, people I knew from the airline, people I knew from the Strip, people I knew from Caesar's Palace. And but other groups came in, maybe doctors or lawyers. They wanted to give their wine
Mhm.
with their doctor's label to their customers, to their patients.
Mhm.
And so they made wine, and there was a maybe 30 barrels with great, and it grew and grew and grew and grew. So for the last 15 years, we've been making wine as a group by the barrel. And luckily for us, our selection of wine, they started importing grapes from South Africa, which has wonderful wines. And then they started this organization of Grape Expectations. They started ordering wine from Chile. I'm sorry, not wine, grapes. They ordered grapes from Chile on a boat, on a ship, of great big containers of grapes. We had grapes from California,
Yeah.
and then they started importing grapes from South Africa. Now, uh, the grapes of South Africa, it's the west coast of South Africa, so it's like the west coast of the United States.
Mhm.
And they started importing grapes from Chile. So we had grapes from South Africa, grapes from Chile, grapes from, and so we were able to combine them for different varietals that didn't exist in the United States because we're making our own wine.
Yeah.
We're choosing the grapes. So grape expectation was a 4, 5, 6 times a year we would go and roll our barrels, stir our wine, uh, and we would care for the wine in the barrel because it was there for in the barrel for a year. And then we bottled it ourselves. All this stuff we're doing ourselves in between working and going to school and working at the airline and caring for my mother and just life.
Mhm.
Life life happens. So Grape Expectations was a supplement. We actually paid for the grapes.
Mhm.
We did all the work from crushing to stomping to everything to bottling. And at that time, it was a year later. Sometimes we would have two barrels, a barrel of South African wine and Chile and American wine, American grapes and Chilean grapes and South African grapes. So we had two barrels a year. So now we had 40 cases of wine,
Mhm.
12 bottles in each case. So we're giving it away, we're doing things. I give wine away at weddings and I put my personal label on it as a wedding gift. And with the date of the wedding, the couple's name, it was a very personalized wedding gift, which really amounted to about a $200 wedding gift or something like that. So Grape Expectation was kind of a nurturing to something, and I'm learning the whole time, learning about different wines in South Africa and all those other places. So now I'm a sommelier, and now Mandalay Bay opens. Mandalay Bay opens, and Bellagio opens, and I'm at Caesar's Palace. I'm working at the airline. I'm going to school, and I got a call from Mandalay Bay. Would you like to come over and interview? I said, okay, you know. So different people want a sommelier like as a backstory. You don't
Yeah.
need a sommelier every day. You don't need a sommelier every week. You need it for private parties or events or something like that. So I did an event for Sheryl Crow within Mandalay Bay.
Mhm.
I'm just a worker. But I served Sheryl Crow and I served Drake and Jonas Brothers and Andre Bocelli and just on and on and on. I got involved in banquets
Mhm.
and conferences and larger events and Kanye West and people who wanted to perform in Las Vegas. And then we started having all these arenas. We have an arena for our Golden Knights, which is our hockey, and that holds 44,000. So now we had a venue to hold 44,000. Then we had the Raiders came, about 7 years ago, and now we have a venue that holds 66,000.
Yeah.
So we have events holding Garth Brooks and Taylor Swift and all these people who have events, and they all need workers.
Yeah.
And so it's a different city now. And then the Oakland A's, they just signed with Las Vegas, and now there is a new arena, outside arena, for the Oakland A's in 2028. So we have all these sports venues now, which we didn't have before. We have the Aces
I was gonna
games,
say
the
Aces. Yeah.
yeah, we have the WNBA team, and I'm a bartender for the Aces games
Okay.
in my spare time.
Wow.
I'm a bartender at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. I'm a bartender at the Michelob Arena, and I'm a bartender at the Convention Center. So I went back to school during all this, and the bartender's a union,
Hmm.
a different union than the servers, a different union than a sommelier, because a sommelier serves wine, but you're serving it with food. Okay, a bartender serves drinks.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily ever serve food. They're for liquor, bourbon, scotch, tequila, rum, eau de vie, beer, and a sommelier always serves cigars. They have to have the knowledge of cigars. But a bartender standing behind the bar, you're making all these drinks. So I then went back to school and became a bartender in the Bartenders Union in Las Vegas.
Wow.
So I'm a bartender, a server, a sommelier, a mother,
Yeah. You've
a
you've done
wife,
it all. You've done it all. Wow.
uh,
Very
and
interesting.
I'm just
Very
and I'm
interesting.
just having fun.
Yeah. You know what? And I say continue to have fun. Continue. All right. As we wind down here on Cali Cat Tap Talks, um, who would you have a drink with in the past?
Okay, I the first person I think of, because I was recently in South Africa, is Nelson Mandela.
Wow. Wow.
He, Nelson Mandela was a man who was in prison for 27 years. He was a diplomat, and he wanted to teach. He wanted people to be safe, secure, and he wanted people to be free. But he was also a diplomat. He wasn't trying to start a war. He was trying to make people inclusive,
Hmm.
the black people and the white people. He wanted people, whatever color they were, he wanted people to have good jobs and to live free. That's what he wanted. And by going to South Africa, going to Robben Island where he was in prison,
Hmm.
I learned about how he taught, how he was kept away from people for 27 years. Saw his wife, I think, 3 times in 27 years, saw his children once or twice, but he was kept in a prison on an island, kind of like Catalina Island off the coast of Long Beach. It was an island of prisoners,
Hmm.
and they were not prisoners of war, they were prisoners of apartheid, trying to not really overthrow the government, but make things equal for people. I think Nelson Mandela then became the president of South Africa after he got released, and he was a man of significant opportunity to be a prisoner and teach, be a man who endured hardship but still wanted to make it better for everybody. And there's one other person that I think I would like to have a drink with, and it's Lady Diana, who died in 1997 in a car crash. She she tried to make the world better. She tried to be a great mother, a great, and the whole time her husband was cheating on her. Uh, in real life,
Yeah. Yeah.
she tried to get landmines out of different countries and make people safe so they didn't explode. They had landmines during wars, and she tried to go and find the landmines so people would be safe around the world and make it known that there's a better way to live. And she was elegant, hardworking, a mother, and a diplomat, all at the same time, and a teacher. She taught us how to be proper and to love each other. And they're the two people in the world I would like to have a drink with if they were still alive.
Wow. All right. So this is Cali Cat Tap Talks, and we've had a lot going on here with Kathy Healy. We're going to bring her back on the show so we can dive deeper on her many juggling of life that she has. I don't even know how to say it, but she's got a lot going on. She's an awesome person, and we're going to be meeting up here in person pretty soon. So,
Just a
yeah,
couple weeks.
yeah, yeah. Well, in a couple weeks, yeah. So that's when I return back. I'm going out to Belgium, drinking some beers out there. So,
Okay.
so all right, guys. This is Cali Cat Tap
Uh,
Talks, and I'm tapping out with Kathy Healy.
Thank you for having me. I love your show.
I love you too. All right.